Alrighty, my lovelies, we are back to review a couple more things that I know you guys already know, but might feel a little dusty since you have been out of school for basically a month. So let's just review that equal sign here means is the same as. And I want us to review a few different things that we know are the same thing, but that sometimes it's easy to forget in the moment. And we're going to review different ways that we can write numbers in equations that mean the same thing but look a little different and allow us to solve problems in a different way. That's going to be really nice moving into some of our division strategies, because some of us prefer to work with fractions, some of us prefer decimals, some of us feel really comfortable doing guess and check work, some of us would rather not use guess and check and would rather have the opportunity to use an algorithm or a specific set of strategies. So I want to give you guys some of these tools to help remind you that we can convert or rename or rewrite our division problems in different ways that lets us use different strategies. So the first thing I want us to look at, I've got this question here, 1 divided by 2. I don't want us to solve this right now. What I want us to do is write this as a fraction. So think about that. We know that fractions and division are the same thing, just written in a different way. Go ahead and try to write this down as a fraction. I'm going to give about 10 seconds. All right, team members, that fraction, this says 1 divided by 2. So when we write it as a fraction, we want to write 1 divided by 2, or 1 over 2. Now I'd like you to think about an equivalent fraction to this 1/2. All right, we've done equivalent fractions in the past. It's a fraction that means the exact same thing. It means you're going to have to do the same thing to the numerator, the top number, as you do to that denominator. Think about an equivalent fraction. All right, team members, I'm going to assume that a lot of people chose something like 2/4. That said, there are infinite options here. You could have chosen 4/8 or 8/16 or 5/10, anything that could be reduced down to 1 over 2 or 1/2 there. So right now we're just showing that 1 divided by 2 is the same as 1 over 2, which is the same as 2 over 4. Think in your head, think about 1/2. Think about if you know how to write that as a decimal. If you're not sure, that's okay. We're going to be learning how to determine the decimal that matches the fractions and division sentences, but you might know it. If you do, get it written down. All right, team members, the decimal that we would be looking for is 5/10. 5/10 is going to be exactly the same as 1/2, 2/4, and 1 divided by 2. Don't worry if you're not sure exactly how I got that. We're going to go over much more of that in the next couple days. But right now, we just want to review that these things are the same. If I had 5/10 written as a decimal, as a fraction, that would be 5/10. And we know that we can write anything over the 10 into this 10's place value here, the 10th's place value. So that's just a little insight into that. I'd like you to think of an equivalent fraction that we could, or equivalent decimal that we could write. Think about our equivalent decimals. How do we create equivalent decimals? Alrighty, again, there are many options we could use here, but probably the most simple would be to think of this as 50 hundredths. 50 hundredths. Anytime we add a 0 after the decimal, that number is exactly the same value. So These are exactly the same. Every single one of these equals the exact same value. If we were to write 50/100ths as a fraction, 50 over 100, these fractions would also be the same. And we know that if we simplify these fractions, 5 over 10, we could actually simplify that all the way down to 1/2. So just one more way to see that they are exactly the same. And they all show the same value or the same amount of something. So we're going to use some of these strategies of converting between division sentences and fractions to really help us solve some meatier problems that may not feel as comfortable. So don't stress if this still feels a little funky or a little bit uncomfortable right now. We're going to get a lot of practice and a lot of examples coming.